Clippers closed at 11 at Barton for emergency repairs. And in the outskirts of Birmingham at Yardley, the A45 Coventry Road is closed heading into the city centre due to an accident. In Hertfordshire, the A1M is partly blocked northbound 6 to 7 from Welling to Stevenage following a crash. And still slow on the M25 through Kent clockwise after a car broke down near the M26. That's the latest.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website, gbnews.com.
It's the final week to see how you could win our biggest prize yet. With thanks to Variety Cruises, a family company sailing since 1942, you have the chance to win a £10,000 7-night small boat cruise for two. With flights, meals, excursions and drinks included, you'll be able to choose from any one of their 2025 Greek adventures. Plus, you'll also win £10,000 in tax-free cash to make your summer sizzle. And we'll pack you off with these luxury travel gifts. Hurry, as lines close on Friday. For another chance to win a prize worth over £20,000, text WIN to 63232. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. Or post your name and number to GB04 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on Friday. Full terms and privacy notice at gbnews.com/win. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm not here to tell you what to think. I'd much rather hear what you have to say. So, send in your opinions to gbviews@gbnews.com. Keep them clean, and you never know, I might read them out. With my panel here on Dewbs & Co, we debate, we get stuck into the issues of the day on a show where all views are welcome, especially yours. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We're GB News, and we come from a proud tradition of British journalism.
That's why I'm so excited to be here. It's something so new.
The first news channel to be launched in Britain in over 30 years.
Launched to represent the views of the British people.
To go where other broadcasters refuse to go.
How did you find out about the story in the first place?
Launched with one aim.
To be the fearless champion of Britain.
It's an absolutely fantastic atmosphere here.
This is GB News.
The People's Channel. GB News, Britain's news channel.
Well, hello there and happy St George's Day to you. The Met Police decided it was a good idea to kettle an event celebrating the day, branding it full of far-right and football hooligans before it had even began. I can't remember seeing so many police, quite frankly, vans, horses, you name it. And by the way, after a certain outcome of a certain court case today, you'd have thought that had perhaps been advancing things with a little bit more caution. But no, it feels like two-tier policing is alive and well in this country. Am I wrong or not? And Rishi Sunak has increased defence spending to 2.5% of GDP. Is that enough? I can't help though, but I think it sounds a bit rich talking about defence when you fail to defend your own border each and every single day. But worry not. The Rwanda plan to the rescue. And get this, one neighbourhood in Birmingham has a 32-page rule book of what you can and cannot do if you want to live there. Is this a step too far or common sense and something we need more of? Also, as well, a simple question for you. Do you think we need more public toilets or not? See you in 2. Well, we're going to get stuck into all of that and more, but before we do, let's cross live for tonight's latest news headlines.
Good evening, I'm Ray Addison in the GB Newsroom. On the day that 5 Channel migrants died off the French coast, including a 4-year-old child, GB News can reveal that more than 250 others have crossed to the UK. A small boat got into difficulties off Wimereux Beach near Boulogne before 2 a.m. A number of other migrants were rescued, with at least one now critically ill in hospital. 5 other small boats have now been received by Border Force and the Dover lifeboat, with migrants transported to the processing centre in Dover Harbour. A further 2 boats were seen heading towards UK waters. Senior figures from the United Nations and the Council of Europe have criticised the government's plan to send asylum seekers to Rwanda, warning that it sets a worrying precedent. The Prime Minister says nothing will stand in the way of flights getting off the ground after the bill finally passed through Parliament late last night. But UN officials say it breaches the Refugee Convention and reduces the ability of British courts to scrutinise removal decisions. Labour leader Sir Keir Starmer says the scheme will not work.
Government has lost control of the borders. But this Rwanda gimmick is not the way to stop it. It cost an absolute fortune, £300 million already, another 50 million either this week or next, to remove a few hundred people. That's a drop in the ocean. To put that into perspective, a week ago Sunday, over 500 crossed the channel in small boats. That's more than the entire number the government plans to remove in a whole year.
The Prime Minister has announced plans to increase defence spending to 2.5% of GDP by 2030. During a trip to Poland, Rishi Sunak said the budget will reach £87 billion by the end of the decade. Addressing troops in a military hangar, he also said the UK defence industry will be put on a war footing. Mr Sunak described the plans as the biggest strengthening of our national defence in a generation.
As Churchill said in 1934, to urge the preparation of defence is not to insert the imminence of war. On the contrary, if war was imminent, preparations for defence would be too late. I believe we must do more to defend our country, our interests and our values. So today I'm announcing the biggest strengthening of our national defence for a generation. We will increase defence spending to a new baseline of 2.5% of GDP by 2030.
Well, that announcement comes as Rishi Sunak warned that President Putin will not stop at the Polish border if his assault on Ukraine is allowed to continue. Earlier, Britain pledged its largest ever package of aid for Kyiv, worth £500 million. During the Warsaw trip, the PM is holding talks with the leaders of Poland, Germany and NATO, warning that the defence of Ukraine is essential to our joint security. Ukraine's President Zelensky has welcomed the package, which includes long-range missiles, armoured vehicles and boats. Well, as we've been hearing, police were faced with violence at a St George's Day event in Whitehall this afternoon when a group tried to force its way through a cordon. Mounted officers on horses needed to intervene when the group broke through a police barrier. The force earlier said it expected some, quote, far-right groups and groups linked to football clubs, end quote, to attend the event. Police say 6 people have been arrested. Labour have outlined plans to tackle rural crime. Research shows that crime rates in the countryside are surging faster than in urban areas. The strategy would see increased police patrols with tougher penalties for thefts and antisocial behaviour. The government is dismissing that idea as a toothless tweak around the edges. However, Sir Keir Starmer says it'll mean communities will be better protected. And finally, in the United States, the judge overseeing Donald Trump's so-called hush money trial has warned that his lawyer was, quote, losing all credibility by claiming that he didn't violate a gag order. The order was intended to prevent the former president from criticising witnesses. His lawyers claim that comments he's made publicly were simply responses to what they called political attacks. But the judge said that argument was without any evidence. OK, for the latest stories, sign up to GB News Alerts by scanning the QR code on the right-hand side of your screen right now, or go to gbnews.com/alerts. Now, back to Michelle.
Thanks very much for that, Ray. I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm with you till 7 o'clock tonight alongside me. The man that was just chuckling away through the headlines there when was talking about toothless tweaks, the parliamentary sketch writer for the Daily Mail, Quentin Letts, and also alongside me, the authoress and journalist, Ella Whelan. Good evening to both of you. I always say I need to do a spin-off programme, which is the panel's reactions to some of the headlines, because I think it's almost like a Gogglebox style show in itself.
Toothless tweak, I love.
We don't even actually know what it was
referring
referring
to. The Trump thing as well. Do you know there was a Mr. Pecker giving evidence in the Trump case today?
A Mr. Pecker? I did not realise there was a Mr. Pecker. Some of these names you couldn't actually make up if you tried, could you? Anyway, we are Dewbs and Kerr tonight, and as I said, we're with you till 7. It is about you guys at home as well. What's on your mind tonight? You can get in touch with me all the usual ways. You can tweet me, you can email me, you can get yourself over to the website and go on gbnews.com/yoursay. Wherever you are tonight, you're very very welcome indeed. Lots of you, by the way, have been getting in touch with me today, showing me your flags. I love a good flag, I do. Let's have a look at this one. This is Tom's. Oh, that's not... Ooh, look at that, he's wearing it. He's got it on his head. He's got it on wrapped around his shoulders. Very patriotic. Would you like that one? Who's this up next? Barry. Let's have a look at Barry's. Glorious little setup there. Very nice. Who's next? Dave. Oh, double flagging it there. Like it. Who's next? Teresa. Let's have a look. Very nice. And Thomas. Oh, look at Thomas. I think I know where you are. I think that's London, isn't it? Is that the event in London? I'll come on to that in a minute. Are you flying a flag outside your house, Quentin?
I'm a bit embarrassed, actually, because I left home on Monday, yesterday, was it? And I left the Union Jack flying, and I haven't changed it to the St George's job, so...
Really?
I will be in bad odour with the neighbours.
You have a Union Jack flying outside your house all the time?
Yeah, we've got a flagpole.
Really?
Yep.
I did not. I don't know.
And we have the flag of Herefordshire sometimes.
I don't know why. I didn't have you down as a flag flyer. I'm not sure why.
My father was very keen on flags, and I inherited his flagpole.
Did you really? Oh, glorious.
I had to transport it.
Glorious.
Rather long on top of the car.
We had a whole debate the other night on this programme about whether or not one needs planning permission for a flagpole.
I don't know. I haven't got it.
It was Annunziata Rees-Mogg. She was saying, I'm sure it was her, she was saying you didn't. One of my viewers was saying you did if it was a certain height. I'm not sure we ever actually got to the bottom of it. Anyway, a flag flyer, Ella?
I'm afraid not. I'd be lynched by my ancestors. It's the Irish thing.
There you go. Anyway,
keep your flags, the Irish flags.
Keep your pictures coming in. One of the things that caught my eye today was a tweet from the Metropolitan Police, because, of course, we know by now, we've just been talking about it, St George's Day, and there was an event planned in central London. Very quick off the mark, the Metropolitan Police came out and said an event to mark St George's Day is expected to take place on Richmond Terrace off Whitehall, which is near Downing Street, basically, for anyone that's not familiar with London. Anyway, the police said, we believe those planning to attend include far-right groups and groups linked to football clubs travelling from elsewhere in the UK. Well, you can imagine everyone was desperate for it all to kick off. You can just imagine how many people would have been lined up there, absolutely desperate for something to go horribly wrong. I've got to say, look, I'm showing you a bit of footage now. So this is from the area where they were allowed to stand, everybody, in this free country, a designated area where they were allowed to stand. Anyway, it didn't take too much time before the next set of images started coming through. This one was actually tweeted out by the Metropolitan Police. What you can see there, if you ask me anyway, is the police, they're kettling in people that are attending this event because, heaven forbid, they had the audacity to step out of the pink shaded area where they'd been allowed to stand. You can see there the police horses, in they come, charging in. I've got another perspective on this one as well. You can see now, this is filmed directly from the other side of that police cordon there, really. And I look at that and I think, is there any need? Is there really any need? Was there any need to kettle these people? Was there really any need to go charging in with that horse? I've got a strap, a text box running, so you can't actually see the bottom of that screen. But there was just three fellas standing there against the wall when that police horse kind of charged in like that. Apparently, someone else walloped one of those horses with an umbrella, and if that is indeed true, then of course I don't condone that. But anyway, as the event kind of carried on, I saw lots of TSG units piling in, police with their helmets and all the rest of it. And it feels to me like there is a two-tiered approach, Quentin, when it comes to protesting in this country, because I don't see every week that kind of police approach.
No, you don't, and I think that's a fair point. However, I would also just sound a little note of caution about this event. First I heard about this event today was the helicopters flying over Westminster, and suddenly thought, oh, there's something going on here. But this was, it seems to have had some sort of political flavour to it, because it had speeches were going to be organised, I think, by Lawrence Fox and Tommy Robinson, who's not a particularly hygienic fellow. And therefore, it certainly wasn't, this was not, it could not have been mistaken for a Church of England fete.
Well, hang on, by the way, because I do want to, in case anyone's not familiar, you say about Tommy Robinson, whatever you just described him as, he had the final day of a court case today when the Met Police were found to have acted in a way against him that was actually unlawful. He essentially had his case chucked out of court. Apparently, he shouldn't have been arrested in the way that he was. He shouldn't have had bail conditions attached to him the way that he should have.
Be that as it may, I'm just not sort of sure that he's an entirely neutral figure. Anyway...
What's that got to do with the price of fish if someone's not neutral?
Well, what I'm saying is I think this was undoubtedly a political event and that the police would have had their eye on that as a result. This was not a civic family gathering.
But what's not? OK, you can say that these pro-Palestine marches...
Yeah, which the police also...
some form of political statement by many.
I
don't see police horses charging people. I don't see people...
Well, the police certainly turn up at those events. And,
what, in that manner, Quentin?
I am reluctant to attack the police without strong evidence otherwise.
So you think that it's all nothing to see here? The way that they police that event today is exactly the way they police everything else? Not
saying that, not at all, and I don't like seeing police horses charging into crowds. However, I am not yet convinced that the police are bang to rights on this.
Hello?
I think there's two things happening here. On the one hand, these kind of St George's Day events, gatherings, protests, whatever you want to call them, historically do quite often descend into shoving around police horses, crushing police, all the rest of it, that kind of behaviour that, is probably most of us wouldn't engage in. There's images of it now on the screen of, a bit of disorder, a bit of drinking, all the rest of it. So, I mean, on the one hand, that happens. I suppose the police have to respond to it. And I think Quentin was fairly light on Tommy Robinson. He's very litigious, so I'm not going to go into it, but certainly I wouldn't want to go drinking with him. I don't think he's a nice bloke. I don't think his views are very nice. And
but
so
you don't
there's
have
that.
to. Nobody has to like everyone in society.
Not at all, but that's me politically judging what's going on there. I also think it's kind of interesting that the St George's Day thing has turned into this kind of culture war, and maybe we could get into that. But the second point, which is almost kind of like you say, so what if that's your view of those people? The second point is that the police are treating this differently. So, for example, they've got to put in a Section 60 order to allow them to increase stop and searches, insist on people removing their masks. And, that kind of quick, hard and heavy action has been absent from some of these Saturday pro-Palestine marches, for example, where you see a tenor within the police or a sort of approach of much more kind of, well, the jihad thing, it's debatable. We kind of do a hands-off thing. Or even worse, you've seen, as has been documented over the last week, police officers escorting people out of the way because they're openly Jewish. So, the police pick and choose where they want to politically intervene, and obviously tweeting that the group is far right and even worse than far right, perhaps football supporters. Yeah. That was the worst bit of that tweet.
It was a stupid tweet.
Is a political intervention which is at best unnecessary and at worst biased. So there's 2 points here. You don't have to like the whole kind of, I think, pantomime nature of the St George's Day thing, which, has a political edge to it that I personally don't agree with. But the point about different styles of policing, I think, stands. The Met can do what it wants and come in hard and heavy with the riot gear and the horses and the charging when it wants to, and when it doesn't want to, it doesn't. So the disparity between what happens on the Saturdays and what happens now is probably clear for all to see. I would like police to not ever charge people with horses and stuff like that unless it's absolutely necessary because of the threat of physical violence. So I'm not suggesting the police repeat what they've done to the Robinson fans and the rest of them this coming Saturday.
I just don't know why you have to have I don't know why this protest had to be outside Downing Street. What's that got to do with St George? St George's Day has nothing to do with politics, really.
No, but this is what I mean about the sort of culture war thing. It's been interesting watching social media today. I've seen far more, how dare you say that about St George posts, than I have outrageous posts about St George. There's a kind of...
maybe the nature of social media.
Well, there's a bit of a sort of... I think there's a bit of a kind of... I suppose it speaks to sort of the question of, well, what does it mean to be... English? What does it mean to be, fan of St George? What are we? What are the values that we aspire to be, which we often talk about on this show? And I think on days like St George's Day, people, rightly or wrongly, resort to the flags, the fish and chip, isn't it lovely to be English thing, which is fine, but as a political kind of understanding of what it really means to live in this country is unsatisfactory.
But I don't understand your point about when you're saying about why do they want to be down Whitehall Well, why not?
What's it got to do? What's that got to do with St George? St George to me is about Shakespeare. It's about the broad, forgiving culture that we have.
Right.
And it's to do with the beautiful countryside we have and our sense of humour, and it's to do with our grub. It's got nothing to do with having a protest outside Downing
That's
Street.
your interpretation of it. And a lot of these people, by the way...
No, of course. I mean, it's a free country. They're allowed to do... Generally, we're allowed to do what we want. But at the same time, part of me recoils from our patron saint. Not that I feel very strongly about the patron saint, because I'm a Protestant. But the idea of my national identity somehow being politicised by Tommy Robinson. I don't want that to happen.
Yeah, but I just find this such a peculiar nature because, such a peculiar point that why are you down Whitehall? Because what's St George got to do with Whitehall or whatever?
Yeah, but this was undoubtedly a political, politicised gathering.
Marches go past Whitehall all the time. This march, it wasn't even allowed... I'm reluctant to even call it a march. I think it was just an event, a gathering, a central destination. There happened to be that central point in London. And they were told you've got to be stationary, you've got to stand still. And then the police are tweeting out, you've got an hour to go before the commencement of the event. And look what they're doing. They're pushing past police lines. But why are you kettling people?
But it's interesting. If you... Just before the show came on, Ellie Costello interviewed some people in Dartford, and I was listening to one of the interviews with a couple in a pub, and when she said, why do you want to come out and celebrate on St George's Day? And he had a very defensive position, the man interviewed, where he said, it feels like you're not allowed to be patriotic. It feels like you're not allowed to fly the flag and support St George's Day, and so that's why I think it's important to come out and do it. And I think that defensiveness is because, we have had culturally and politically a very snobby attitude to as much as I'm not a fan of it, the St George's flag, let's go back to Emily Thornberry doing the whole kind of tweet about, was it Rochdale? There's a real sneery attitude to the kind of, a lot of the time, working class expressions of patriotism. And so that defensiveness might be justified in some senses, but it's not political, it's not politically substantial to go down the kind of bang the drum patriotic route. It's a bit of fun, and I think we should take it lightly, but the idea that it would get turned into this big protest movement, which I think it was outside of Whitehall, it was quite far in political. There's no problem with that.
But that's because the police wouldn't let them go on Whitehall. So they had this shaded area where they had to stand stationary on and around Richmond Terrace or whatever it's called, and then those people wanted to, whatever they wanted to do, wander around, have the audacity to walk down a street. From what I saw, the police then cut that line off. So you had some people there, some people here, and the police going, well, you're not going through? Yeah. Well, so if people go, well, actually, my mate's there, or I want to go that way, that's not massively unreasonable. No. I saw old people knocked down to the ground. I saw police horses, bashing up against people that were stood absolutely stationary, and I can't help but wonder, and this is just me wondering out loud, if that group of people were standing there waving pride flags, or if that group of people were standing there waving Palestinian flags, would they get that reaction from the Metropolitan Police? I don't think that they would.
Well, no, there's probably the best comparison is, go back to the sort of interventions made by Just Stop Oil or Extinction Rebellion, where there was people in papier-mâché lying all along the routes around Westminster, and the police were very unwilling to take out or remove people who were literally causing public disturbance and blocking roads and things like that. That, in comparison to, which essentially is the kettling of people this afternoon, whatever I think about those people down in Whitehall, the kettling of them, I think is pretty outrageous. And Quentin, I don't know, maybe you disagree, but I think that there is a disparity there. And I think you don't have to
I agree. I think there is two-tier policing.
Well, there you go. What do you make to it at home? As always, you can have the final word. I just think, both of my guests have mentioned Tommy Robinson. Anyone that's followed that court case today, it was, I would say, quite humiliating for the police, actually. And I would have thought that they perhaps would have slightly adjusted their attitude today, but alas, not. What do you make to it all? Get in touch. All the usual ways coming up after the break. I want to talk to you about defence. We have got an extra £75 billion announced for defence over the next 6 years. Is it enough? Will it be spent in the right area or not? See you in 2.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Offline and overlooked. That's what Age UK say millions of British pensioners are. Why? Because they cannot or won't access the internet. It's leading to digital exclusion. So the charity's campaigning for public services like banks, utilities and even the NHS to maintain a more human approach.
Everything's online. People assume you've got a smartphone with a mobile number and an email, and without that you don't exist in this world anymore. We've got to try and get the government to see that it's so important to make people feel that they belong, because there's a feeling that the older generation just feel that they're forgotten, they're in the way, and we already know that anyway, but it's just another reason for them to feel that they're not wanted. They'll just accept it and they'll say, well, that's it, I can't do it anymore. And that's it, whereas other people would be really kicking and screaming. So we need to be the voice for older people.
Despite digital technology playing an increasing role in our lives, around 1 in 5 over 65s in the UK don't use the internet. Thornycroft Centre in Pontefract, West Yorkshire, provides a space for this age group to socialise and get help to go online.
I'm not that good with mobiles, so when you mention anything about online, I ain't a clue what you're talking about.
The closure of thousands of banks is also detrimental to the older generation.
A lot of our members what come, they tend to use cash. They don't like to use bank cards. I think a lot of it's trust or the lack of knowledge. They don't understand how it works. I think they're very vulnerable as well with online. It's really important that they're aware how to use it and how to use it safely.
So, in an online era, it's still crucial for many to have an offline option.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Weekdays from midday, we bring you the most compelling stories from across the United Kingdom.
And why it matters to you. From your doorstep to our inbox.
That's right, we want to hear from you. Good afternoon, Britain. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Every Saturday, 10 till 12, we'll bring you all of the news that you need to know. We'll also remind you that there is so much to smile about.
It's my favourite time of the week. I get to relax, enjoy some light-hearted stories, and let Ellie teach me about fashion too.
That's Saturday Morning Live, every Saturday, 10 till 12.
Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Hello there, I'm Michelle Dewberry with you till 7 o'clock tonight. The parliamentary sketch writer for the Daily Mail, Quentin Letts, and the author and journalist Ella Whelan are alongside me until 7. Your thoughts coming in thick and fast on that St George's Day topic. I'll bring some of you into the conversation in a few minutes, but for now, Rishi Sunak has announced that UK defence spending will increase. Let's listen to some of what he had to say.
We've entered a period in history in which competition between countries has sharpened profoundly. An axis of authoritarian states with different values to ours, like Russia, Iran, North Korea and China, are increasingly assertive. So the new assertiveness of these authoritarian states far from our shores must concern us, because they are increasingly acting together against the fundamental values that we all hold dear, of democracy, freedom and the rule of law.
There you go. So, long story short, defence spending will go up. Now, it will be 2.5% of GDP. And also, apparently, that means about £75 billion across the space of 6 years. I mean, it's all well and good talking about these agitating states and these aggressive states and all the rest of it. I look at it and I think you can't even defend your border against a group of men in a rubber dinghy. So how do you think you're going to defend this country against the likes of your China, your Russia and all the rest of it? Is it just money? Is it as simple as that? Quentin?
Money is important in defence, and this is a good and serious decision. Whether or not it's going to solve the short-term problems is a very different matter, because defence spending takes an awful long time to get through. And also, arguably, actually, one of the big changes in the last year or so is that in defence, big, heavy-duty projects are now possibly going to be less important. Spending in defence is possibly going to be more agile and nimble in future, in that drones have become such a big story, and it's much cheaper to have drones. It's much cheaper to have lasers as well. And so one of the big stories in defence spending is that we're going to need less of it, funnily enough, which is slightly counterintuitive to this today. But I think the Prime Minister is right about the danger of Russia and Iran particularly. I'm less convinced by the military danger, certainly to us, of China and North Korea, but certainly the Iranians and Russians are colluding at the moment. This axis of authoritarian states, that's the phrase, shades of George W. Bush there.
Hello?
Yeah, I agree that it's a welcome move. I mean, it's a lot of money, but there are some people saying it's not enough. You have to remember that there has been a real failure to keep up with what's needed in terms of defence spending. There's also the sort of, relatively large elephant in the room, which is that you can spend all the money you like on equipment and preparations and deterrence, but you need to have a population of citizens who are a significant portion of that population who are willing to step up and use that equipment and do the defence, because you still do need the people. And we know that there's a problem with that in terms of, let me be clear, a nice problem that we've not had to have generations go to war for a significant amount of time, and I don't lament that. But it does, one of the effects of that means that, and I'm no fan of war, certainly nobody is, but it means that in terms of willingness to make that great sacrifice to imagine yourself being able to do what needs to be done in war is something that I think is just out of the realm of possibility certainly for a lot of young people. That's a cultural hill we're going to have to climb.
Not so much cultural, though. I mean, I presume you're talking about recruitment here, military recruitment. And one of the big things that affects that is unemployment rates. And because there's been low unemployment recently, it's meant it's harder for the military to recruit youngsters. But that, is in a way, that's quite a nice problem to have too.
But I don't think it's just a practical one. I think, Sunak is talking about making some statements that, I would get behind, some big statements about the fact that the difference between Russia and Iran or, various Islamist groups in the Middle East, the civilizational differences between us as being we believing in freedom and autonomy and democracy and sovereignty, and them not believing in that. Well, having that strong sense of what it means to be part of this country, what it means to fight for your country, means that you have to have that kind of coherent national identity. And I think we've just had a row about it in relation to St George, but that has suffered that sense of what it means to be a British citizen, what it means to want to fight for your country. And so that sort of ideological, cultural battle has to be waged a bit better by this government or any government that comes in the future, because at the moment it's a bit of an ask to say, well, fight for your... It's not like it was in previous generations where there was a clear sense of what you would be fighting for and the kind of values around that. But
I think you make a very good point, because on the one hand, if, heaven forbid, anything was to go wrong to the point where you need particularly young, fit and able-bodied people to stand and fight for the country, if you were in that situation, where you spent years telling those people you're far right, you're racist, the younger people, you can't afford to get a house, you have all of these kind of forces going against you. But I think particularly if you're a young white male in this country, you seem to be at the lowest level of the pecking order for pretty much anything, really. But then when you then call upon those people to actually stand and fight for you, I think that you probably would find yourself with quite a big problem. And I don't know the answer to that, by the way. I'm just sharing and reflecting your point.
Hold back a little bit on the self-hatred of Britain here. I think this country is a fantastic place. And I think it's a much more fantastic place than Russia or Iran. And I suspect a lot of young Russians would agree with you also, and a lot of young Iranians. And so let's not be quite so down on our country.
Nobody's been down on it. I've said...
Michelle's having a go at us the whole time. I think this place is... I think you will find there will be no no shortage of pride in this country if it came to a serious military emergency.
Comparing us to Russia is a bit of... I mean, I consider it to be a bit of a low bar.
But that's what we're doing, isn't it? That's what we are doing.
But to make a cheap point, it's also the case that the British Army is itself creating a situation in which sort of the things that you need to fight a war, sort of hardiness, having a tough neck, being sort of resilient, seem to be sort of dirty words, whether it's rows about, you know, gender and diversity quotas or kind of the woke stories that keep coming out of the army about so-and-so being reprimanded for misgendering or whatever it is. It feels like they're you know, the one place in the country, the one institution that you think should be just intolerant of any nonsense like that and be focused on getting yourself, like you said, fit enough and mentally resilient enough to, let's not beat around the bush here, potentially kill people in defence of your country, the greatest sacrifice you could ever make.
And just to be clear, I'm not having a go at you.
They don't seem to be doing that job well.
I'm not having a go at you two. I'm just getting absolutely sick and tired. There's nothing aimed at you.
No, not again. I know it's not against me.
I'm sick and tired all the time of anyone that is patriotic, that is proud of their country, that's not ashamed of whether it's the flag or the anthem or whatever. I'm sick and tired of those people being called racist, being called far right, being kettled into streets and being told you can't move, whereas other people that seem to be able to celebrate their rights and all the rest of it, they don't seem to have that level of abuse or restriction placed upon them. I'm fed up of the majority of this country being told that they continuously have to bend over backwards to accommodate the whim of each and every single minority group, and if they don't, they are a horrible, awful human being that's xenophobic or whatever else it is. I get a little bit tired of it. Anyway, if I bring it back to spending on defence, Donald Trump, he very passionately spoke out and said that countries that were not willing to spend enough money on their own defence shouldn't be perhaps bailed out by NATO.
Yeah.
Did you agree with his sentiment on that?
Yeah. Do you remember when he told off? He went to a NATO meeting when he was President Trump, and I think he had Angela Merkel opposite him. And she was looking at him like he was a dead sausage by the end of that one because she didn't like being told off. He was absolutely right. And as a result, and since then, European countries or other NATO countries have shown a little bit more enthusiasm for contributing to the budget. Quite right, too. And one of the good things about this thing today, I think Sunak is showing some leadership among other NATO leaders. He's saying to them, come on, look, this is our responsibility as much as America's, and we've got to show that we are willing members of the club because, you know, you can't rely on Washington doing everything.
Indeed. One of the things that gets me... Last night, I swore to myself, right, I was not going to mention Rwanda again. I've got so bored of going around these ridiculous circles when it comes to the Rwanda plan. I never wanted to see it mentioned again until it had crossed the line. Anyway, it did cross the line about midnight. So now that is apparently imminently going to become law. Do you think this will actually change anything? I mean, you've had those people, very sadly, including a little girl, die crossing the channel. You know, will this actually change anything, the Rwanda plan?
No, I don't think anyone's under the illusion that it's anything other than perhaps Sunak, but I actually don't even believe that he believes it himself, that this is anything other than a sort of tokenistic show of wanting to do something in capital letters. There's, you know, the very... If you're talking about deterrent, I mean, anybody who pays any attention to British news watching the farce that has been the implementation of this bill knows that there is, in terms of deterrent, it isn't going to be effective. I also just, I mean, in terms of the sort of practicalities of stopping people traffickers and stopping the tragedy of deaths like we've seen over the last 24 hours, it isn't necessarily going to be the quick fix. What we need to do is tackle the issue of immigration much more broadly.
Just quickly, you just said that you do...
I do, yeah. I interrupt this misery fest to say that I think yesterday was, I mean, it's long overdue in the blasted House of Lords and a whole legal apparat that was trying to stop this project. I think they're disgraceful behaviour because they're basically helping the people smugglers. But I think potentially this is a very good policy, and I think there's a potential here for it, and the Home Office is in discussion with other African countries for it to be rolled out, as they say, to other African countries, and there is also the possibility of other European countries then taking the lead from Britain and doing the same. And I think that in the cumulative effect and the message going out could be extremely good. And the Home Affairs Committee went to France, North France, and they heard evidence of the impact of the original announcement on the Rwanda plan, and it was instant. The asylum seekers were immediately taking this on board.
There you go, Andrew. I think, Andrew, you must be one of Quentin's friends. You've got in touch and said, Michelle, you are a drama queen. Please, can you calm down? Luckily for you, I've got a break now. I'll take a chill pill within it. When I come back, I want to talk to you about neighbourhoods. Do you think we need to have stricter rules among our communities to help build up a sense of belonging and unity? Tell me. I'll see you in 2.
Hello, good evening. Welcome to your latest GB News weather update. It will stay dry, but it will be quite a cold night tonight. And throughout tomorrow, the best of the sunshine will be across north and western areas once again. That's because high pressure is dominating over here. Meanwhile, to the east of the UK, we've got low pressure and this weather front. That's brought cloudier skies throughout this afternoon to the southeast. That should clear away overnight, though, and we'll be left with this northerly wind. That will bring a cold feel to coastal areas through Wednesday, but also a few showers overnight tonight. Should be fairly light and mainly just restrict coastal areas. Further north and west, though, clear and dry and quite cold by tomorrow. We could be down as low as -3 or 4 for some Scottish glens, but the frost should be fairly patchy and should melt away fairly quickly as well. Then we'll be left with a dry and bright day for many western areas of the UK. In the east, though, with this northerly wind, that's always going to drag in a bit more in the way of cloud, and that risk of showers will continue into Wednesday afternoon. We'll feel a little bit brighter, though, than today, as the cloud will be a bit higher, and in the best of the sunshine, could see highs of 15 or 16 degrees. Another cold night to come on Wednesday night, so a cold start on Thursday, and then this area of low pressure in the North Sea will bring this band of rain and cloud across northern areas of England, southern Scotland through Thursday. It should be drier and brighter in the south, but then Friday and Saturday look that much more unsettled. However, notice temperatures will start to rise by Saturday.
The latest GB News travel.
Good evening, I'm Johnny Ratner with the latest. Long queues continue through Lancashire this evening on the M6. The motorway remains closed northbound from junction 32 to 33, just north of the M55 for an ongoing police investigation. The eastbound entry slip road is also closed on the M55 at junction 33. In Birmingham, in the outskirts at Yardley, the A45, the Coventry Road is closed towards the city centre following an accident. In Worcestershire, the A441 Alvechurch Highway at Redditch, that's still closed at the scene of a crash. Still very slow on the Kent stretch of the M25 clockwise. The left lane still closed just after the M26 for emergency repairs. Great Northern trains are suspended out of London up to Hertfordshire from Gordon Hill to Stevenage because of overhead line problems. And South Western can't run down in Hampshire, Farnborough to Basingstoke following a faulty train. And that's the latest.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website, gbnews.com.
I'm Christopher Hope.
And I'm Gloria Di Piero, bringing you
PMQs live here on GB News.
Whenever Parliament is in session on a Wednesday at midday, we'll bring you live coverage of Prime Minister's questions. We'll be asking our viewers and listeners to submit the questions that they would like to put to the Prime Minister, and we'll put that to our panel of top politicians in our Westminster studio.
That's PMQs live here on GB News, Britain's election channel.
Hello there, Michelle Dewberry with you until 7 o'clock tonight. The parliamentary sketch writer for the Daily Mail, Quentin Letts, alongside me, as is the author and journalist Ella Whelan. Welcome back, everyone. Liam says, please, can you say a happy 41st anniversary to my wife, Wendy? There you go. Consider it done. Liam says, why is anyone who flies a St George flag automatically accused of being far-right and a supporter of Tommy Robinson? Are you not allowed to be English and proud to be so in England these days? Who else is this? Defence. Leslie says, Michelle, we can't even get people in this country to go out to work, let alone try and get them to go out to war. Harry says the only reason the armed forces cannot recruit is because kids today do not like being told what to do, he says. Do you agree with that or not? Get this, everybody, a housing estate in a very nice area of Birmingham. They've created a neighbourhood code, if you would like. It's a 30-odd page handbook. It's got all kinds of different rules as to what people need to do. You can't have artificial grass to the front of your property. All your railings and your gates need to be painted one colour. If you want a satellite dish, you've got to get permission. You can't park your caravans and motorhomes for a long period of time on your driveway. You can't hang your washing on certain days. Is this the future of neighbourhoods, Quentin?
I don't know. I hope not, because I don't like being told what to do either. I would probably be very disobedient about this. And if you're told you can't put down plastic grass, then I think, in certainly speaking for myself, it would make me just want to do exactly that. There are parts of Germany, I'm told, where you're not allowed to mow your lawn on a Sunday. I don't know what the reason for that is. It may be an old Calvinist thing, I don't know. Or perhaps it's just that the Germans like to go to sleep on Sunday afternoon. I don't know. But anyway, this is Edgbaston Village, it's called, in Birmingham. Very nice part of Birmingham, I must say. You know, you've got to have a fair bit of money there. But these people who are complaining about it, presumably, when they bought their properties, did they not look at the terms and conditions? I don't know.
That's a very good point.
Neighbours, yeah.
Yeah, I don't know where. It says, at Calthorpe Estates, we've always invested in maintaining the integrity and period charm of the estates to provide a quality environment where people want to live.
Well, it's interesting. I mean, expanding from the conversation we've just had about what it means to be, you know, English, the whole sort of Englishman's home is his castle is quite sacrosanct, and we don't like to be told what to do, and we don't like to be pushed around. So this seems to be sort of flying in the face of that. But it's fascinating to me that there is this trend towards wanting to live in perfect toy towny, almost Stepford Wivey kind of neighbourhood.
Hyacinth Bucket Close.
Exactly, yeah, a sort of suburbia on steroids.
Well,
that throughout the lockdown sort of hellish period, there was this big trend of people partly wanting space and a bit of quiet, moving out to the countryside, moving into sort of various rural little idyllic towns that had never seen, you know, someone move there for decades. And part of that was a desire for space, like I said, but it was also sort of I think it's a longing for a kind of community. I've just commissioned a really good essay in defence of suburbia, which I don't particularly agree with as a born and bred Londoner, Central Londoner myself, but you know, an interesting point that people want a sense of kind of neighbourhood, community and collectiveness, and this might be the sort of slightly more bureaucratic, maybe slightly fascistic side.
I think another thing driving it is looking after each other's property values. And I've lived at times I've been posted to New York a couple of times, and in New York, in your office, in your not your office blocks, your apartment blocks, there's always the superintendent, who's the person who looks after the building, and there tend to be very strict rules in those buildings too, and it's to do with, first of all, living at close quarters and getting on with each other, but also preserving the value in a communal building of your own flat.
I was just about to say something, and I thought, well, I can't say that because Quentin will tell me off for being negative.
Good, you see,
I was going to say
the positive vibes are seeping through.
What I was going to say, obviously they've not seeped through far enough, is I was going to say that's all well and good, but a lot of people, they do everything possible to maintain their property to a good standard, and then along comes some developer and transforms the terrace house down their street into some HMO, shoves it full with God only knows who, and down go your property values, and you don't have a lot of influence on that. But I'll try and be more positive.
I'm not sure that'll happen in Edgbaston Village.
I think that you're absolutely right on that one, I must confess. I want to talk to you about something that I'm led to believe by many of you is a very important topic. I'm asking you a simple question. Do we need more public toilets? Tell me. See you in 2.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 p.m.
So J. Cole, who is a rapper, says that he felt terrible after releasing a song aimed at fellow rapper Kendrick Lamar and vowed to pull the track off streaming services. He said, "I ain't gonna lie to y'all. The past 2 days felt terrible," he told an audience at the Dreamville Festival in North Carolina. "I damn near had a relapse," he said.
There's a lot of young people, especially, you know, that would look at that and they will take it not just as entertainment.
It doesn't happen in any other form of art that I can think of. This is not happening in country music, is it?
Well, it's the same problem in both cases, isn't it? Who's doing the regulating? And surely it's each case on its merits, isn't it? You don't just ban a genre.
Why is there such a lot of hatred for a man who usually would have trash-talked back to stand up and say, you know, this doesn't sit well with me and I love this guy. If we look at, I think his name was Cody Fisher, the semi-professional footballer who died in a club because someone stabbed him. Now, he was stabbed because he stepped on someone's trainers. This is the level of ego we're seeing from a lot of young men who don't have any output of being able to channel that energy, and a lot of it is stemming from cultures like football, hip-hop, these sorts of things. So I'm just saying it's refreshing to see a man who could have easily wiped the floor with his lyrics say, I don't have to, you know?
But it's interesting, isn't it? Because I took this interview in the wrong direction. It's not about pointing out the areas of concern. Actually, this story is saying, look, music and art can be giving you an example of how to live a slightly better life.
That's free speech, saying, sorry. I'm sorry, I choose not to fight back because I love you. It may look like a wimpy thing to do, but it's still free speech.
You know what? I love you, Paul. Sorry about earlier.
Are the newspapers getting you down?
My wife didn't divorce me that month.
Struggling to separate the wheat from the chaff?
I know that it's a bit of a circus at the best of times.
Well, don't worry. Headliners has got you covered. We'll take the burden of reading the day's news, and if we get depressed, who cares? It's an occupational hazard, frankly. That's Headliners on GB News from 11 p.m. till midnight, and the following morning, 5 till 6 a.m. on GB News, the comedy channel. Nah, just kidding. Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Weekdays from midday, we bring you the most compelling stories from across the United Kingdom.
And why it matters to you. From your doorstep to our inbox.
That's right, we want to hear from you. Good afternoon, Britain. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Patrick Christie's. This is GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello there, I'm Michelle Dewberry till 7 o'clock alongside me, the parliamentary sketch writer for the Daily Mail, Quentin Letts, and the author and journalist Ella Whelan. Now, the Wales Senior Forum, which is a national forum of older people, has basically warned that older people are deliberately doing things like avoiding drinking water or liquids, etc., before they go out because of a lack of public toilets. I read a comment piece about this in the Telegraph today, and it was saying the headline is "A shortage of public lavatories is proof that Britain despises its old." Hello, Whelan, what do you think to this?
I feel really passionately about this. I think public toilets are a central part of social public infrastructure. They're vital. There should be 10, 100 times more of them. You know, pregnant women and old people, older people, or even a vast number of middle-aged men need to go to the toilet regularly. And it's you end up sort of bartering with restaurants, trying to force your way back into the dirt you lose at the back of corner shops, and or you know, doing things that you don't want to be doing in public behind bushes because you're just desperate to go. And it does mean that it hampers your ability to go around in public. We know that public toilets often have double the number of urinals than they have women's toilets. And actually, there's a really interesting, I'll just give you a very quick potted history on this, which is that there was, you know, no toilets for women pre-Victorian era, and there was this sort of campaign by groups like the Ladies Sanitary Association, was a kind of highfalutin one, and then there was a sort of more working class one that formed in Camden, arguing that women were on a urinary leash. That's what they were talked about, because you basically weren't able to leave the house for extended periods of time because there was nowhere for you to go to the toilet. And so it has, you know, public toilets actually have quite an interesting progressive social history, that a lot of them started opening after women were getting more involved in public life through work in World War I, and it became more normalised. And that sort of boomed in terms of public infrastructure, and it's really tapering off now. Public loos are closing all over the place. In the royal parks, you have to have a contactless card to go to the toilet. They don't even take 20p's anymore. So I think it's a really big issue, because it means making public spaces more accessible. We want more people to be out in the community. We want more people to be out in parks, you know, having a good time, feeling relaxed, and particularly for old people, this stops them from doing that.
What do you think to this?
I don't think an enormous amount, but I suppose I ought to declare an interest as a 61-year-old bloke. But I remember when our children were young, it used to be quite a big thing then, in that, you know, if nature struck, then you did need to find a place. But we used to go into a pub or a cafe and buy something and then use their loos. I don't know. I mean, it's where the old spend a penny comes from, and isn't it? In that expression, that you really did have to spend a penny, and now you can't even spend 20 pennies. You have
But
to
I asked someone today.
Produce your plastic card, apparently.
I asked someone today, and because I was debating whether or not to cover this story, and I said to someone, but why, if you needed to go to the toilet, why wouldn't you just go to a cafe or a restaurant similar to what you've just said? And they said, well, Michelle, a lot of people in this society are well-mannered, and they don't feel that they can go into a cafe or a bar or whatever and use their facilities if they're not customers of said facilities.
Well, perhaps my wife and I were extremely rude. I don't know, but I think we used to do it in a reasonably polite way.
But it should be part of public infrastructure. It's not to get too graphic about it. It's a human need that we all have, and I think that we, you know, to come back to the sort of lockdown point, we had this period of horrendous anti-social, you know, tension and enforced anti-sociability, and we sort of, I think a lot of us, particularly on this channel, realise the importance of social life, public life. Anything that facilitates that and makes that easier, particularly for intergenerational mixing. You know, you don't just want parks to be the places of mums and toddlers or young people. You want it to be all kinds of people. And if it's particularly for elderly people, if having a few extra toilets is what's going to make the difference, which I think actually for a lot of people it would, then build them. And
some of them got quite high tech.
So tight.
Do you remember those self-clean ones? They used to alarm me slightly.
Dreadful.
And
Yeah,
they
they're
used
like
to.
TARDIS.
You were worried about that. And then one of the funniest things I ever saw was John Prescott on a train when they brought in the ones with the sliding doors, and old Prescott was desperate to go, and he couldn't work out which button to press to open it, and someone had to tell him. He was Deputy Prime Minister at the time, and he couldn't operate an electric door.
I have frequent nightmares about train toilets. You know the ones, and you have to wait for the door. It has to slide.
Yeah, that's the one.
You have to wait for it to go all the way.
Jags was outside. He was
hate them.
scratching his head.
And I always think about George Michael when I think about public toilets as well, which is not.
How about John Gielgud?
A very good image. No, I actually don't spend
the
much
toilets
time.
in Hampstead are lovely, actually.
I don't spend much time thinking about public toilets, I must confess. But many people are getting in touch. It can't be right that you've got elderly people in society that are doing things like stopping drinking.
If you believe that.
2 hours.
If you believe that.
Why would you lie about not drinking before you go to toilet?
Right, to know, I think that may be Wales Senior Forum trying to get themselves into the papers.
There's a lot of you know, older guys I know who do that, who, because they've got, whether it's issues with their prostate or whatever, I know it's something that people often feel embarrassed talking about, they shouldn't, that they go without, and that's not right. You know, it's just public convenience is meant to be a social issue, and why not? I think that it would be, if it makes life more comfortable for people. We sort of have this. Interesting that public spaces at the moment are often about making life more difficult, whether it's sort of rainbow zebra crossings that freak out guide dogs or whatever. There's the idea of having accessible, open and proper functioning public spaces sort of going out.
Well, there you go. How important are public toilets to you? I've inadvertently opened up a can of worms.
I'm going to write a book on this.
You're all getting in touch with me and you're rating. You're all telling me the best and the worst of public toilets. Apparently, I need to avoid them at Stansted Airport. Adrian has told me. Torquay, apparently they're not very good. Some people saying that there's none at all on the harbour. Apparently Leeds have a good selection of them. I'm not sure what this tells me. Yeah, well, there you go. But Dave says, I'm incontinent and I'm practically a prisoner in my own home. This is a very important issue, he says. So there you go. But for now, that's all I've got time for. Ella Quentin, thank you. Thank you at home. Don't go anywhere, not even to the toilet, because Nigel Farage is up next and you don't want to miss him. See you later.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello, good evening. Welcome to your latest GB News weather update. It'll stay dry, but it will be quite a cold night tonight. And throughout tomorrow, the best of the sunshine will be across north and western areas once again. That's because high pressure is dominating over here. Meanwhile, to the east of the UK, we've got low pressure and this weather front. That's brought cloudier skies throughout this afternoon to the southeast. That should clear away overnight, though, and we'll be left with this northerly wind. That will bring a cold feel to coastal areas through Wednesday, but also a few showers overnight tonight. Should be fairly light and mainly just restrict coastal areas. Further north and west, though, clear and dry and quite cold by tomorrow. We could be down as low as -3 or 4 for some Scottish glens. but the frost should be fairly patchy and should melt away fairly quickly as well. Then we'll be left with a dry and bright day for many western areas of the UK. In the east, though, with this northerly wind, that's always going to drag in a bit more in the way of cloud, and that risk of showers will continue into Wednesday afternoon. We'll feel a little bit brighter, though, than today, as the cloud will be a bit higher, and in the best of the sunshine could see highs of 15 or 16 degrees. Another cold night to come on Wednesday night, so a cold start on Thursday, and then this area of low pressure in the North Sea will bring this band of rain and cloud across northern areas of England, southern Scotland through Thursday. It should be drier and brighter in the south, but then Friday and Saturday look that much more unsettled. However, notice temperatures will start to rise by Saturday.
Looks like things are heating up. Boxed boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
The latest GB News travel.
Good evening, I'm Johnny Ratner with the latest. Big problems up in South Yorkshire for the M1. The motorway is blocked both ways at junction 36, the Barnsley South exit, while a police investigation gets underway. And an ongoing investigation in Lancashire closes the M6 northbound, junction 32 to 33 from the M55 and Lancaster South. Long queues on the approach back onto the M55, where the eastbound entry slip is closed to junction 33 for assistance. And then in the outskirts of Birmingham at Yardley, the A45 Coventry Road shut for accident investigation work. In Worcestershire, the A441 Alvechurch Highway at Redditch, that's closed for accident investigation work. And still queues on the Kent stretch of the M25. The left lane's closed clockwise just after the M26 for emergency repairs. Long queues back to 4 at Orpington. And no Great Northern trains out of London from Gordon Hill to Stevenage for overhead line problems. That's the latest.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website, gbnews.com.
It's the final week to see how you could win our biggest prize yet. There's an incredible £10,000 in tax-free cash to spend however you like. Plus, courtesy of Variety Cruises, a bespoke 7-night small boat cruise for two worth £10,000. With flights, meals, excursions and drinks included, your next holiday could be on us. Choose any one of their 2025 Greek adventures and find your home at sea. We'll also send you packing with these luxury travel gifts. Hurry, as lines close on Friday. For another chance to win a prize worth over £20,000, text WIN to 63232. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. Or post your name and number to GB04 PO Box 8690 Derby T. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on Friday. Full terms and privacy notice at gbnews.com/win. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
We're GB News, and we come from a proud tradition of British journalism.
That's why I'm so excited to be here. It's something so new.
The first news channel to be launched in Britain in over 30 years.
Launched to represent the views of the British people.
To go where other broadcasters refuse to go.
How did you find out about the story in the first place?
Launched with one aim.
To be the fearless champion of Britain.
It's an absolutely fantastic atmosphere here.
This is GB News.
The People's Channel. GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Patrick Christie's. Every weeknight from 9, I bring you 2 hours of unmissable, explosive debate and headline-grabbing interviews. What impact has that had?
We got death threats and the bomb threat and so on.
Our job is to do what's in the best interest of our country.
You made my argument for me.
My guest and I tackle the issues that really matter, with a sharp take on every story.
I'm hearing it up and down the country. That was a beginning, not an end.
Patrick Christie's tonight from 9 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.